Yeah, I've been doing a lot of work in this area actually with Oxford University, and obviously they've been having a lot of problems in this space. I think one of the things in terms of for the big Russell Group universities particularly, in order to actually survive and future-proof themselves, they're going to have to get this stuff right, actually, because particularly if Brexit happens, how we source talent is going to have to change. We're not going to have as many foreign students in the same way. So I think what's happening is there's a real reckoning happening at the moment where institutions that for centuries haven't even considered this stuff are now having to look at themselves. I think in terms of your point, Ari, students of colour not getting a first, well, it's the same for 2-1. It's not actually that different. The research shows it's frightening. It's actually, the research is first and 2-1, and then all of a sudden it's just this influx get a 2-2. And that has, the research around that has shown that there's unconscious bias within the lecturers in terms of what they see students of colour as being capable of. Also culturally, sometimes how somebody speaks or presents themselves, therefore you have all sorts of connotations around that. And there is definitely a problem. There is definitely a problem when you look at the stats. You're like, how is this possible? Particularly when you're getting gifted kids from the state school system that are then coming in. And actually, it's the same for working class kids, actually, because the data is terrible for both. When you're getting gifted kids from the state school system coming into Russell Group universities and then not being rewarded justly for their ability. But I do think that what's happening now is a lot of these institutions are realizing that, you know what, if we want to survive, if we want to be here 50 years from now, 100 years from now, we better make sure that we're sourcing talent from as wide a pool as possible. So I think in terms of what you can do, I always say to young people, it's so great being able to say that now, young people. I say to young people is to go as a collective. So don't be the troublemaker on your own. It's like way too much hassle, actually. You know, find a group, 10, 20 or so like-minded students and come up with a plan. So, you know, go to your Vice-Chancellor with a plan and say, we've seen that this is a problem here. We've looked at your data. We've seen that only X% of kids from state schools or BME backgrounds are coming here, and we think this is why. And while we're here, we want to try and help you with this. So that by the time you leave, you know you've made that small change, and then hopefully it's a little bit better for the next lot. But yeah, but there's definitely a serious problem. I think there's
Thank you very much.
Yeah?
I think there was somebody in the front, was there, who wanted...
him, and then there was and there's a lady there as well.
Okay, we are running out of time,
Okay.
so if you can make them...
I was interested you picked up on disability, and
Yes.
I wondered if you had explored these ideas in the context of mental health.
Yes.
Because the interesting thing about that is invisible, yet the
Yeah.
impacts are so profound.
Yeah, very much so. So one of the areas that I really look at, even more so than that, mental health is neurodiversity. And the fact that it's only in the last sort of 2 decades that we've really started diagnosing the way that the brain functions differently for those who have neurodiverse conditions, and also where their strengths lie and how we can best utilize them in the workplace. So an area that's really quite progressive, funnily enough. They're terrible on gender and all of this other stuff, but actually when it comes to the area of neurodiversity, the tech industry is really leading the way. So some of the big tech giants like Microsoft, IBM, SAP are actually setting themselves targets on how many people that are on the spectrum that will be in their coding teams. I think the thing that needs to happen, which is why it's so important when you look at the work that Prince Harry and all of those that are doing, is we need to, number one, start having the conversations so that we don't straight away demonize people with mental health issues, so that your average person actually understands the various types of mental illness, so that if somebody in your workplace is suffering from a mental illness, you treat them the way you would treat somebody who's suffering from a physical illness, and you realize that actually once they get the help that they need, they can still contribute to your workplace. And I think that's why it's really important that we make sure that people are informed, but it's looking at the various different types of mental illness and also neurodiversity, so that we can create a place for that in the workplace too.